Hi, my name is Sydney Burgess, and my Coasts of the World project is about New Zealand's tectonic history. I'll start with the location we are looking at today. The first location is Christchurch. It is located on the South Island and experienced a 6.3 magnitude earthquake on February 22, 2011. The second location is Kaikoura. It is also located on the South Island and experienced a magnitude 7.8 earthquake on November 14, 2016. During this presentation, we will discuss why this is such an active area for tectonic movement, compare the emergency preparedness for these events between a 5-year interval, and relate it back to the objectives of the course by talking about the coastal consequences of large earthquakes. The Christchurch quake of 2011 began at 12:51 p.m., right around noon, when many citizens were out for lunch. Within 10 minutes of the initial quake, 10 aftershocks of magnitude 4 or larger shook Christchurch again. 184 people were killed and hundreds more were injured. Several large buildings collapsed, including the Canterbury television station, in addition to other brick-and-mortar buildings. The Christchurch City Library Archive states that over 100,000 buildings were damaged and nearly 10,000 needed to be completely demolished. Telephone, water, sewage, and power lines were down, and many roads and bridges were damaged from fallen debris. Months after the quake, water and sewage systems were still severely damaged, and many had to use portable toilets and bottled water for daily functions. The largest problem associated with this quake was the liquefaction that occurred afterwards. Liquefaction occurs when groundwater makes its way to the surface after a disruption. This can cause dangerous road conditions and can even cause buildings and other structures to sink. Liquefaction, combined with broken water pipes in close proximity to the coast, caused massive flooding in Christchurch and the surrounding areas as well. This earthquake was caused by a fault that had not been previously known that was 6 kilometers south of the city center. This type of fault was a reverse slip, meaning that the hanging wall of the fault moved up while the footwall of the fault moved down. During the Christchurch quake, the hanging wall moved upwards nearly 2.5 meters. The Kaikoura quake of 2016 began at 12:02 a.m. when many citizens were asleep. The low casualty count can be attributed to this. 2 people died and around 50 were injured. This quake was caused by a network of 20 or more fault lines that ruptured within a minute and a half of the initial disturbance. This quake was caused by an oblique reverse fault. This means that the hanging wall slips down and away from the footwall in a diagonal fashion. Liquefaction was again a large factor during this quake and caused landslides that blocked roads and stranded tourists and residents. New Zealand issued a state of emergency and told all of those residing on the east coast to make it to higher ground. A tsunami generated by the quake was headed their way. Although it was quickly downgraded to coastal warnings, this highlights how poorly New Zealand was prepared for these disasters. New Zealand's South Island sits halfway on the Australian continental plate and halfway on the Pacific Oceanic plate. This is a subduction zone in which the older and more dense oceanic plate subducts below the continental plate. New Zealand is also located within the infamous Ring of Fire, where 90% of the world's earthquakes occur. This being said, New Zealand should have known the effects that earthquakes and the subsequent tsunamis, landslides, and floods caused by them would have on their nation. GeoNet monitors the earthquake activity in New Zealand by using over 180 sensors placed in various locations across both islands. At the time of the Kaikoura quake, the stations were not being monitored 24/7. On September 4, 2017, nearly a year after the Kaikoura quake, legislators finally gave funding to GeoNet to hire more staff for constant monitoring. The network of sensors and staff should be fully operational by the end of 2018. During a 2016 quake, New Zealand's emergency call line 111 was shut down for over 30 minutes after its operators ran for cover and forgot to divert incoming calls to another call center. Thankfully, this was able to be done remotely by another call center and emergency calls began coming in again. One positive thing to note is that emergency sirens were working throughout the quake and the tsunami warning. The east coast of New Zealand is a very popular place for tourists to go whale watching, wine tasting, and visiting of famous movie filming locations. Tourism dropped a significant amount during the months following the Kakori quake. New Zealand's Ministry of Transport concluded that in November and December of 2016, Kakori's tourism industry lost 21 million New Zealand dollars. This converts to roughly 14.7 million US dollars. This is a huge loss for New Zealand's economy, especially those families who directly profit from whale tours and other aforementioned businesses. As our population increases in the future, more and more people will flock to the coastal areas. This large concentration of city centers on the coast will cause more casualties and infrastructure damage when large catastrophes like the Christchurch and Kakori earthquakes occur.